If you have even a passing knowledge of H.P. Lovecraft and the worlds he's created, there's a good chance that you know who Cthulhu is, or at least you've heard about this ancient demonic god from another universe who came to Earth. But little is known about Cthulhu's mates and his spawn. Did you know that Cthulhu can reproduce asexually? Well, in this video, we explore all 8 of Cthulhu's offspring, their forms, powers, and more. But before that, let's explore a bit of Cthulhu's physiology and how exactly he mates. Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who or what is Cthulhu? I believe Cthulhu is the most famous of all entities that H.P. Lovecraft ever described or created in his work, and since then, hundreds, if not thousands of artists have attempted to create this mysterious monstrosity based on their own understanding and perception. Although it comes from another universe altogether, if we are to compare it with earthly beings, it can be said that Cthulhu is something created when you replace a human's head with an octopus and give it dragon-like wings. And yes, dragons are mythical creatures, but for the sake of conversation, let's assume they're from Earth. More specifically, Old Valyria. Or wait, that's something else, I suppose. That said, we get a more detailed description of Cthulhu from the sailors of Lovecraft's world, which is more telling than the statues and sculptures that artists have created. The creature has a tentacled head that is placed over a scaly torso, which also has a pair of rudimentary wings. Rudimentary because its wings do not seem strong or large enough to carry Cthulhu's weight, but then it doesn't really follow the principles of physics as seen on Earth or in this universe. But all sources confirm that Cthulhu is largely bipedal, like humans, or that's at least the case when it's not swimming. But the most interesting aspect of Cthulhu is that it can change its shape and size to appear as different beings. While some may measure up to 100 meters, others may appear in the size of a regular human being. But then there's something about Cthulhu that negates everything I have said until now about his appearance. Since the being is so different from our understanding of life forms, it is nigh impossible for humans to correctly understand the shape, sound, and smell that are Cthulhu's attributes. So everything that humans see when they see Cthulhu could be flawed, courtesy of our brain's incapacity to comprehend the extra-dimensional creature. It's quite important to note that familial relationships, progeny, and terms like father, mother, child, etc. are not really applicable to Cthulhu and its spawns, because these terms are essentially anthropomorphic. But there's hardly another way to describe Cthulhu and its spawns without the use of these terms. Additionally, they help us in differentiating the asexual and sexual modes of reproduction that Cthulhu often follows. For instance, the spawn of Cthulhu named Shurash-Ho was produced asexually by Cthulhu through fragmentation or budding, and yet there have been others that Cthulhu produced with the help of a mate. Furthermore, it is quite possible that Cthulhu and its spawn are composed of plasma or ionized gas that's found in another dimension altogether. According to a few Lovecraftian scriptures, Cthulhu mated with a being called Idia and had 3 male spawns named Zothamog, Ethogtha, and Gatanathoa, and a female spawn named Cthilla. Some sources say that he brought Idia from another dimension so that the creature could serve as its mate. Now that we have a basic understanding of Cthulhu's physiology and reproductive methods, let's jump into the various spawns that we know of. I should warn you that most of the spawns here have little to no information surrounding them, but I will try to be as comprehensive as possible. Number 1. Gatanathoa. Gatanathoa, also called the Dark God, was created by Lovecraft himself when he served as a ghostwriter for Hazel Held's 1935 story Out of the Eons. Of course, it is a giant, like most Lovecraftian monsters are, but more importantly, its appearance is so hideous that anyone who looks directly at it becomes petrified, much like what happens when someone looks at Medusa. However, while Medusa could be looked at through mirrors, Gatanathoa's reflections and perfect images produce the same petrifying results, and that's precisely why it is exceptionally difficult to know exactly how the creature looked, because no one that ever beheld it lived to tell the tale. However, we do know that it looks somewhat like a blend between an octopus and an elephant, with an amorphous body that is largely wrinkled and scaly. It is believed that Gtanathoa was brought to Earth during prehistoric times from Yuggoth, a strange planet which is the homeworld of the Migo, who are a race of fungoid crustacean-like aliens. Also called the Patron Demon or Hellish God, Gtanathoa was sealed beneath a humongous trapdoor in the now lost continent called Mu. Above this trapdoor, a fortress was built so that Gtanathoa would remain there. However, when humans came into the picture and walked the earth, they started fearing the monster's powers and appearance. Naturally, they began offering sacrifices to Gtanathoa, and eventually began worshipping it. If they didn't offer sacrifices, the monster would emerge from its crypt to wreak unimaginable havoc, which primarily included the death of the lucky ones, while the few unlucky ones would find their skin to become leathery and solidified, while their internal organs and brain remained fully active. I don't think it's quite possible for me to fathom the sheer horror of living inside a body that's been entirely paralyzed while the mind is still fully active. But what makes Gtanathoa's wrath even scarier is the cult that follows the octopus elephant monster. They ensure that Gtanathoa's terror remains alive and kill those who try to defy their deity. Beyond the established mythos, Gtanathoa appeared in a Japanese TV show called Ultraman Tiga. Here, Gtanathoa appeared as Gtanathor and proved quite difficult to kill. Number 2. Ethogtha. Ethogtha is essentially the second male spawn of Cthulhu and its mate, Idea. But like most of the spawns, Ethogtha came into existence on Zoth, which is a green binary star in another dimension. The so-called brother of Zoth-Amog, Cthulhu, and Gtanathoa, the Cthulhu spawn resembles a giant humanoid frog. Ethogtha has only one eye that's placed at the center of his weird head, which also fashions as a dense mane and beard that's made of nothing but tentacles. Not surprisingly, Ethogtha is gigantically large, much like its brethren. A sorcerer and a priest named Xanthu once attempted to free Ethogtha from its prisons in the Abyss of Yi, but upon reaching his desired spot, Xanthu noticed several slimy mountains around him. In reality, these were simply Ethogtha's fingertips. Now, this might be an exaggeration because even Cthulhu is not that huge. I mean, if Ethogtha's fingertips seem like mountains, then his arms should measure tens of thousands of meters, and his entire body would probably be the length of continents. However, when Xanthu saw the real form of Ethogtha and what it could mean for his people, he abandoned freeing his deity and fled. The Elder Gods saw this as an act of supreme blasphemy, and sent Xanthu's entire continent of Mu to the depths of the ocean, and Ethogtha met the same fate. Ethogtha was ultimately freed from its prison by the Yugs, which were flat, worm-like creatures, and their leader named Ub, who was also called the Father of Worms. Number 3. Zoth-Amog. Zoth-Amog first appeared in the Zothic legend cycle written by Lynn Carter, so it is obvious that this great old one belongs to the expanded Lovecraftian mythos that was not necessarily created by H.P. Lovecraft himself. This being is the third male spawn of Cthulhu and has a body that looks like a tapered cone. Furthermore, it has a reptilian head, much like the head of a T-Rex, which is a deviation from the regular octopus-like heads that we usually see in the Cthulhu spawns. Having said that, Zoth-Amog does have the trademark mane of tentacles on his head that's the staple to Cthulhu's children. Zoth-Amog's arms are like flat and broad starfish, but they come with suckers. Much like Ethogtha, this guy also takes help from the Yugs and the Father of Worms, but the most astounding power of Zoth-Amog is the creation of sentient statues that can communicate with humans, in addition to warping their minds. If Zoth-Amog did ever exist in real life or even in the movies, I believe that the protagonist should first try and demolish these sentient statues. But before that, they would need to slay or suppress the worshippers of this great old one, because they would pose a large hindrance to that. Number 4. Cthulhu. Cthulhu, the daughter of Cthulhu, is one of the strangest figures in the mythos. Not only is she the daughter of Cthulhu, but she is also supposed to give birth to him on the off chance that he dies. Now, I don't even know if I can classify this as a daddy issue, but it's bloody demented and twisted. But I suppose, who am I to judge extra-dimensional beings? Also called the Secret One, Cthulhu is forever guarded by Yugya and the Deep Ones because of the sheer importance that Cthulhu holds as far as Cthulhu's future is concerned. And because of the same reason, her followers hide all information about her, which gives her the name the Secret One. Cthulhu brought Cthulhu to Earth along with Idia from Zoth, the green binary star. Cthulhu is the youngest of all the children born from Cthulhu and Idia. In the short story titled The Call of Cthulhu, the eponymous character wreaks extreme havoc, and that's exactly what he does when Cthulhu is wounded because of a subterranean atomic bomb. I mean, you don't really mess with the daughter/mother of someone like Cthulhu, and if you do, the consequences would be more than extreme. As far as her appearance is concerned, Cthulhu seems like a giant red octopus with 6 eyes and a pair of rudimentary wings. Like Cthulhu and most octopi, Cthulhu can alter the shape of her body at will. Interestingly, it has been recorded that Cthulhu can fly as well. While she has 8 tentacles at all times, she can produce more arms at will. Additionally, each of her arms are donned with numerous razor-sharp claws. At some point in time, a group of researchers captured Cthulhu, believing that she was a rare and previously undiscovered species of octopus, but clearly, that didn't end well for the researchers. Number 5. Leviathan. Leviathan is not necessarily the direct spawn of Cthulhu, but he's still considered one of Cthulhu's children because he's the embodiment of Cthulhu's rage and wrath. Despite being so powerful, much of Leviathan's history and origin is shrouded in mystery. Leviathan has existed in the deep waters around Darkwater Island, where it devours large sea creatures like whales. Leviathan was first discovered in the 14th century by the locals, whose minds he corrupted and forced to worship him. In the end, he compelled them to sacrifice themselves with the intention of unleashing Cthulhu. In the 17th century, Reverend John Wickwood led several European settlers, and they all began worshipping Leviathan, but met with the same fate as the locals. In the year 1847, a group of whalers seemingly destroyed a part of Leviathan's body, but they ended up consuming the flesh, which brought these people under the direct influence of Leviathan, who made them worship Cthulhu. However, in 1924, Leviathan's physical body was freed by an investigator named Edward Pierce. As for his appearance, he looks like a mammoth shark-like being and measures at least 50 meters in length. Although he prefers to remain underwater, he is capable of moving over land. Most of the myths about monstrous marine creatures are attributed to Leviathan. Numbers 6 and 7. Cthulhu and Nictosa. When Cthulhu decided to mate with his sister Casogtha, they had twin female offspring named Cthulhu and Nictosa, who are collectively called the twin spawn of Cthulhu. Both the sisters bear striking similarities, but Cthulhu also received Cthulhu's shape-shifting abilities. However, she's not as good a shapeshifter as Cthulhu is, and her powers are much like earthly shapeshifters. Being a lesser old one, Cthulhu can only take the forms of aquatic organisms. Both the twins somehow found themselves trapped in the Great Red Spot of Jupiter. It's possible that elder gods subjected them to this imprisonment, because, despite being lesser great ones, they have a penchant for bringing about death and destruction. However, despite their confinement, they can still communicate telepathically. Number 8. Shurash-Ho. Also called the father of all ghouls and the prowler among the tombs, it is believed that Shurash-Ho is actually the progenitor of all ghouls. Shurash-Ho mated with Bast to create the first ghouls, including Yogash the Ghoul. But how did this guy come into existence? Well, it's obvious that he was a spawn of Cthulhu, but Shurash-Ho was born through asexual reproduction, possibly budding. It is through Shurash-Ho that H.P. Lovecraft calls himself a descendant of Cthulhu. So, Shurash-Ho also gave birth to Goth the Burrower, who mated with Vibernia, a woman from the Roman nobility. Vibernia herself was possibly the daughter of Nyarlathotep, or the Crawling Chaos. So when Vibernia and Shurash-Ho got busy under the sheets, they gave birth to Lunwi of Wales, the direct ancestor of H.P. Lovecraft. However, I must point out that the union between Vibernia and Shurash-Ho was nothing less than a hellish and nameless tragedy. So that's all we have to offer about the spawn of the Lord of the Watery Abyss, but I would also like to add Tith to this list. Unfortunately, there's hardly any mention of this freaky dude. How would you guys rate these spawn according to the danger they pose to humans and Earth? That's it for our video today, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. This has been Corey Whelan for Marvelous Videos. Have a good one, be safe out there, and thanks for watching.